Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're building a blueprint for one of the most dreaded tasks in any leadership role, the difficult conversation. We'll show you how to turn all that anxiety and uncertainty into a clear, actionable plan.
So, let's start with a scenario that probably feels all too real if you've ever been in a leadership position. It's that one conversation that's just looming on your calendar. You know it's necessary, but man, you would do almost anything to avoid it.
You know the feeling, right? We've all been there. That moment you know you have to have a tough talk with someone on your team. Your stomach just tightens up, you start rehearsing lines in your head. It's a completely universal source of stress.
Okay, now let's add another layer of complexity. This isn't some formal HR thing, but you've got senior leadership watching, and you absolutely need to see improvement. And to make things even harder, you've heard a rumor that this person might be dealing with some really heavy stuff at home.
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? I mean, there's so much at stake here. For their career, for your team's morale, for you. So how do you handle it with both firmness and empathy? How do you actually get it right?
Well, instead of just winging it and hoping for the best, what if you could walk into that room with a structured plan? What if you had an emotional blueprint to guide you through it?
Now, this isn't about some fuzzy idea of just being nice. We're talking about a very practical skill set. Based on the work of psychologists Jack Mayer and Peter Salovey. They were the ones who really pioneered this idea that emotional intelligence isn't just a personality trait. It's a set of hard skills you can actually learn and get better at.
This blueprint gives us 4 clear, actionable steps to work through our difficult conversation. It's a really powerful sequence. First, you perceive the emotional landscape. Then, you connect those emotions to what's happening. Next, you understand what's really driving them. And finally, you actively manage them to get to a productive outcome.
All right, let's put this blueprint into action. We're going to start with the first 2 steps, which are all about mapping out that emotional landscape, perceiving and connecting with the feelings in the room. And I mean both your feelings and the other person's.
This first step is where you have to think like an iceberg detective. You know, what we see on the surface is just a tiny fraction of the whole story. So the first step is to just pause and really consider what's happening emotionally beneath the surface. For both of you, before a single word is even spoken.
I mean, just try to put yourself in their shoes for a second. Before you even open your mouth, they are likely walking into that room with a whole cocktail of feelings. They could be worried about their job, embarrassed about their performance, or maybe just completely overwhelmed by everything going on.
And here's a really fascinating insight. For the employee, all that high anxiety is probably going to throw up a defensive wall. But for you, as the manager, a little bit of anxiety can actually be a really powerful tool. It can sharpen your focus and, more importantly, it can help you tap into your own memories of struggling, which is really the foundation of genuine empathy.
So we've mapped out the emotional landscape. Now we're moving on to the final 2 and much more active steps of the blueprint. Understanding the meaning behind those emotions, and then strategically managing them to guide the conversation where it needs to go.
Understanding the why behind an emotion is the absolute key to unlocking a productive path forward. It's not enough to just know someone is being defensive. You have to think about why they're defensive and how that feeling might shift and change once you start talking.
This slide really gets to the heart of a manager's job, right? You have to acknowledge your own pressures, the senior leaders watching you, while also anticipating the employee's potential shock or defensiveness. And it's this understanding that allows you to manage the situation proactively, mentally preparing, choosing the right time and place, and being ready to just hit pause if things get too intense.
These are your practical, in-the-moment tools for managing the conversation. Things like paraphrasing, just repeating back what you heard shows you're actually listening. And validating their feelings with a simple, "I can see this is difficult," can completely lower their defenses without you having to excuse poor performance. These are the strategies that can shift the energy in the room from conflict to collaboration.
So why is having a structured blueprint like this so important? I mean, why can't we just rely on our instincts? Well, the data on our own self-awareness is, well, it's a little humbling.
You see, throughout this whole scenario, we've kind of assumed the manager has the skills to pull this off. But what happens in the real world when you misread the signals? What if your own anxiety takes over and you just lose control of the whole conversation?
And here's a number that should make all of us just pause. When researchers compared how people rate their own emotional intelligence with their actual tested skill, the correlation was less than 0.2. To put that in perspective, that means there's almost no connection between how good we think we are at this and how good we actually are.
To put it as simply as possible, we are just not as skilled in this area as we think we are.
We might believe we're fantastic at reading people or managing our emotions under pressure, but the objective data suggests there's a pretty significant gap for most of us.
And that's exactly why this matters so much. A structured framework like the EI Blueprint isn't a crutch, it's a professional tool. It helps us bridge that really dangerous gap between our perceived skill and our actual ability, especially when the pressure is on.
So the next time you see a difficult conversation on your horizon, don't just hope for the best. Blueprint it. Use this framework to turn a moment of anxiety into a real opportunity for focused, prepared, and genuinely empathetic leadership.